For someone who thrives and lives on the adulation of his fans, to turn on a section of them, a vocal section like this, George, seems to be dead against the Trump playbook so far.
Well, he went even further just now. He doubled down on it, speaking in the White House, and called them stupid on several occasions. He said that they were being duped by the Democrats. So it's turning into a question over his authority, basically.
There's a lot going on this evening in America and politics, and who's the guy to talk us through some of it? George Grylls, Times Washington correspondent, who's on the line now. Hey, George.
Good afternoon.
Hey, well, you're welcome, George. So welcome. Where do I start? I'm going to start with the. I'll start with the Epstein affair, because that's been bubbling. It's clearly a headache to Donald Trump. You know, the Jeffrey Epstein affair. For so long, we were told, weren't we, that there were secret files, lists of clients, and many in the MAGA family high up were telling us that was the case. And now we are told, aren't we, by President Trump, certainly by the Attorney General Pam Bondi, nothing to see here. She doesn't have a client list, although she said very clearly she did have one, and it was on her desk. And a lot of MAGA people just aren't buying it inconveniently for President Trump. And here's the thing, George. I'm now looking at a printout of his latest Truth Social posting. And he turns in a way that I find absolutely extraordinary, George, on his own people here. He talks about, first he starts off castigating the Democrats for perpetuating what he calls this scam, which he says will forever call the Jeffrey Epstein hoax. And then he goes on, my past is caps. Supporters have brought this into BS, hook, line and sinker. He said they haven't learned their lesson, probably never will, even after being conned by the lunatic left for 8 long years. And then he goes on, praising his own record. And so then he says this, George, let these weaklings, talking about his own people, let these weaklings continue to do the Democrats' work. Don't even think about talking about our incredible and unprecedented success, because, he says, I don't want their support anymore. Look, that is extraordinary stuff, isn't it? For someone who thrives and lives on the adulation of his fans, to turn on a section of them, a vocal section like this, George, seems to be dead against the Trump playbook so far.
Well, he went even further just now. He doubled down on it, speaking in the White House, and called them stupid on several occasions. He said that they were being duped by the Democrats. So it's turning into a question over his authority, basically. Since 2016, and he burst onto the political scene, he has held such a sway over the right of American politics, and it seemed omnipotent, on that side of the debate. And yet now there are those who are starting to question him. I'd say you could pinpoint it to the strikes on Iran, when a lot of isolationists in the MAGA world think of kind of Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene. These were critics of the president over his foreign policy intervention, and these are the same sorts of people who are now incensed basically by his refusal to release the Jeffrey Epstein files. But there are even signs that it's going beyond the kind of the MAGA loyalists, the fringe outriders who tend to trumpet Trump online. You've now got the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, saying that we want transparency and accountability, and this is what Republicans stand for, which seems like a direct challenge to Trump's authority, which might explain why you had this furious outburst in firstly the Truth Social and then in the Oval Office earlier.
I want to get Kate and Mikey's view on it. It is a basic rule of leadership that you do not turn on your own in this sort of savage way, isn't it? Especially when you thrive, and more than anything else, on the adulation of your most loyal supporters. You don't sink your teeth into them like this. It just seems to be asking for trouble, and he's taking on the loudest voices in his club.
Yeah, this whole discussion and debate and calls to kind of declassify the Epstein files, that was always a big cause célèbre for MAGA people. And Trump lent into that so long. So you can kind of understand, we might think that's a bit of a conspiracy theory, but you can understand why they're kind of puzzled and bemused as to why suddenly he's ditched that idea. The interesting thing with Donald Trump, I wonder about, is people always say, actually, his supporters tend to go with him.
Yes.
That he can move, he can U-turn, he can change his views on things, and they tend to go with him. But you obviously have this Epstein file issue. He seems to be shifting a bit on Ukraine as well. There's certain core things he promised in opposition that he's shifting on now in power. And I guess the question is, does he have an actual fundamental breach with some of his membership and support base? Or do they end up moving with him, as they have previously?
His people are incredibly loyal.
Yeah.
But would you think that works because he leads them and they'll follow? That doesn't mean they're going to put up with being beaten up unless, of course, it does.
But they like strength. I mean, Trump is all about strength. And as he says, that these are weaklings, John.
And stupid. Yeah. Mikey.
Well, there's a thing I noticed. There was a shift in his rhetoric in the last couple of days from previously. He was very much sort of full swing behind Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, saying there's nothing more to see. Everything we've got is out. We've put out this video, which had a bit missing from it, but we've put out everything that there is to see. And yesterday he started saying we've released everything that is. We will release everything that is credible.
Yeah.
Now, that to me suggests that there is more, and that they're thinking very carefully before they release it.
Well, they're going to release bits of it they deem to be credible. It's going to be redacted, isn't it?
Sure, but I don't know what is or is not in any.
No,
but if I was a person who went into last week thinking that Donald Trump's name was not in the Epstein files, then I would have come out of today thinking it definitely was, because of how just nuclear he's gone on this. That his big problem always was that a huge part of his base, more than you might think, have made careers out of conspiracy theories.
Yes.
The podcasters made very, very lucrative careers. And
enormous following.
And
enormous following.
Part of the ecosystem of MAGA. Trump knows this very well because he put two of them in charge of the FBI.
Yes.
Kash Patel and Dan Bongino in charge. They were both podcasters. Did loads of stuff about Epstein over the years. And he must have known this was going to be a problem for him down the track, and it's getting a little hairy for him now because
George, what's your take? I know maybe we can't know at this moment because we don't know, but how do you guess some of those cheerleaders, people like Tucker Carlson with multi-million followings and so on, and Laura Loomer, she's been right in the front of the Epstein row. How are they going to take to this?
I think there is disappointment among some, members of the kind of MAGA movement, the wider MAGA movement, that they aren't in the tent, that they're outside the tent. If you look at the appointments that were made to the Trump administration, there were some pretty eyebrow-raising names on there. And for those who were not on the list, who didn't join Trump when he returned to the White House, there's a sense of feeling slightly excluded. Now, sometimes Trump has kind of benefited from this relationship, and Laura Loomer has sometimes worked as a kind of attack dog, a deniable attack dog that he can send off and not really have his fingerprints over as she pursues whatever enemy it may be. But the problem is that if you have this kind of vocal MAGA, influencers essentially who have large numbers of supporters constantly making noise outside and criticizing Trump's appointees, and notably he has been defending Pam Bondi so far, that's a real issue, and it obviously causes divisions.
Yeah, I mean, he's taking a risk here, isn't he, George? I mean, could his fabled grip on his people, could it be unraveling? If a grip can unravel, I'm not sure it can, but you know what I mean.
I think we're in the foothills of that. If we are to see it, I mean, I think we're pretty early stages at the moment. I'd say today is the real moment where Trump has turned on Republicans in a way that it says to them, if you step out of line, you've crossed me, and people who cross me tend not to do very well. So I think this is the first time he's kind of put it in such explicit terms to people but when you have the Speaker of the House coming out and kind of pleading with him to U-turn and release the files, you can see why he acted as he did.
Yeah, well, you can threaten political players. You can't threaten the average MAGA in the red cap in middle America. How do you threaten them? All you can do is keep them or lose them.